Hi everyone. So today we will be looking at how to write a supplementary material for your research paper. So we'll go over why we actually need a supplementary material to support your main paper. And then we will learn what to write in the supplementary material documentation. And then we'll follow this through with how to actually write and organize different sections in the supplementary material documentation. So we need the supplementary material for a few reasons. The first is that ideally in a research paper, if you are submitting it to a conference, you have a limited number of pages. So you would want to add like the main core contributions in your main paper, and the other technical details that would follow would be inside your supplementary material. And this would actually support the main results and actually complement the main claims that you are making in your paper. So you can think of it as an extension to your main paper. And the last reason would be that we would always try to add those stuffs that we cannot fit in the main paper. So which is why we have the supplementary material. This could be when you are showing examples of images or maybe adding videos to compare different models, then you can use these supplementary materials. So what goes inside a supplementary material? The first thing would be that it would have the details of implementation. For example, the training and test details. How do you train your model? How you test your model? And then you would also have the architecture, the explanation of the architecture, unless your core contribution is the architecture itself that would go on the main paper. But other than that, if you are, for example, proposing a learning paradigm, then you can discuss the architecture on the supplementary material. Then we would also talk about the hardware and software used, like what is the number of GPUs or what machine learning framework you are using. And then we would also follow this with the dataset description, where you would simply enumerate the number of datasets that you are using with a focus on the application of that dataset. And then you could discuss the difficulty or challenges in that dataset, followed by the number of samples. And you would also cite the main data papers from which those datasets came from. You could also add additional results that support your main results and claims you are making in your main paper. And ideally, we would not have new experiments, but rather we would have those experiments that would support the original results that we added in the main paper. So this is when you think of it as like, for example, if reviewer 2 says it's only good for 4 or 5 images that you put in the main paper. For example, in a paper, in your main paper, you are showing a few examples of a pattern that you are highlighting that, okay, when we do this, this is the pattern that we are seeing. So the reviewer might argue that, okay, it's only good for 4 or 5 images. What about the others? And then you could add like more results in the supplementary material, which would basically back up your claim that you are making in the main paper. And also this goes for any other results, method, or analysis that you would like to add, but which you could not fit in the main paper. You could just add it in the supplementary material. So how do you actually write a supplementary material? The first part would be that we would have different subsections. So the first subsection would be implementation details. Here we would add the details on how to pre-process the data for training. What is the model architecture? How do you train the model? How do you then test the model? And what are the hardware and software details? So on the right, you can see an example from one of my papers, which is a part showing you the supplementary material implementation details section. So another section would be about the datasets, where we discuss the application of the dataset, the importance of it, the number of samples, where we also say the train and test split, and finally, the difficulty or challenges in the dataset. And also always be sure that you are citing the main data papers from where you're using that dataset. And another section would be to showcase the additional results. This could be graphs or tables. This could be visualization of predictions. or it could also be discussions to support the main claims that are in your paper, like in your main paper. And it is also important to note that these results will complement the claims and the results that you are making in your original paper. So it would be like an extension of your main paper, these additional results. So you could think of it like that. So here's a simple template to get started with when you are writing your supplementary material. So the first part would be implementation details, and then you would discuss data pre-processing, model training, testing, hardware and software details, description of the data sets, and then any additional experimental results that you think would be worthwhile adding, which would support the results and claims you are making in your main paper. I'll also quickly show some examples. So here's one example from one of my papers, which is the supplementary materials. You can see here the implementation details. We have data pre-processing, architecture, model training, testing, hardware and software details. And then under additional results, we have the runtime analysis, discussion for a specific problem, which in this case was small objects, and comparison on other data sets as well. So you can get the idea of what a supplementary material looks like. It is similar to the main paper, but it basically holds additional results that you cannot add in your main paper because of space limitations. Here are some other examples and tables. Here are some visualizations. So one thing you guys could see is that I don't have any description of data sets. This is because I was able to add that description in the main paper itself. So I avoided it adding it here again. Here's another example of supplementary material from one of my other papers. You can see it follows a similar trend where I talk about the data pre-processing, model training, testing, and then other necessary details that we weren't able to add in our main paper. So yeah, that's it for now. And I hope you learned how to write a supplementary material that you could add with your main paper. So on the next section, we would be looking at how to ensure reproducibility and structure code bases for your machine learning research projects.